Good afternoon, everyone. We are again back with a new technique or tools that we are going to study today for marketing research as a subject, right? And in our last class, we have already talked about marketing research. We have also talked about qualitative approaches where we talked about the phenomenology, the case study, action research. So the last topic that we were studying was qualitative approaches, right? So today we'll start in continuation for what we had studied in our last class. So the agenda I will discuss it once we are clear with what we are going to study today. So the topic that we are going to study today after our last class of qualitative research approaches in continuation is the class of qualitative research techniques and tools. And like I said, we will first discuss the agenda of the class as in what we are going to study for this topic, qualitative research techniques and tools. Once the agenda is clear to each one of you, we'll start with the discussion of the topic, right? So the agenda. In today's class, we'll talk about different type of qualitative research techniques. There are two types, indirect and direct. On the basis of the indirect and direct, we have got different techniques. So in those different techniques, we'll focus on the focus group. The advantages and disadvantages of focus group, we'll talk about them. Then we'll talk about the in-depth interview, which is a part of the qualitative research techniques. We'll see which category does it belongs to, either the direct or the indirect. And then we'll study about the projective techniques. Similarly, for the projective techniques, we'll see that which type of technique it is. Is it an indirect technique or a direct technique? So let's begin with our class with the qualitative research techniques, right? So what are qualitative research techniques? Qualitative research techniques are techniques used for the research, as in what kind of qualitative research tools we are going to use. When we talk about the qualitative research techniques, there are two types of qualitative research techniques. The first one is direct and the other one is indirect. How do we know, or what is the base, as in which is a direct or an indirect technique? So the base is whether the true purpose of the project is known to the participant. So depending on the purpose, as in whether the purpose of the project is known to the participant, we classify the qualitative research techniques to two types. The first one is the direct one and the second one is the indirect one. When we talk about the direct one, we also call it as a non-disguised technique. Non-disguised technique means this is a disclosed one. As in, what is the purpose of the project is not known to the participant. That is a direct technique. When we talk about the indirect technique says that it is a disguised. Disguised technique, which means it is concealed. Concealed means that the purpose of the project is not known to the participant. They have no idea as to for which they are going to give the data. So qualitative research techniques are divided into two bases on whether the project or the research for which the data is being collected is known to the participant or not. Direct one is the disclosed one where the purpose of the project is not known, and indirect one is the concealed one or the one for which it is known. Right. Now, when we talk about the two direct one where the purpose is disclosed, these are two types. The first one is the focus interview and the second one is the in-depth interview. These are the examples of direct research techniques. In the concealed one, where the purpose is not known to the participant, we have the projective technique. Also, we sometimes use the observational technique. Right. So let's start with the one which is the first one of the direct qualitative research technique. This is the focus group. So focus group is a kind of a interview technique. It's a group interview. What happens that there are roundabout small number of people, maybe 6 to 8 in number, and they are grouped together through a moderator. So there is a moderator who is the leader of the interview, as in the person who asked the question, and he is the one who develops the discussion. Right, that's the moderator. So the moderator is going to make you comfortable and ask you and probe questions to you. When I say that focus group interview consists of 8 to 6 or 6 to 8 participants, it means it is a smaller in size, right? And what happens in a focus group, that the moderator is the one who leads and develops the discussion. He makes you comfortable and then he asks you the questions, right? So the moderator is the leader who develops the discussion. He makes you comfortable. He builds rapport. And then he uses the motivational technique of asking and probing questions. Once he has recorded and observed what you have given the answers for, he is going to analyze that report and interpret the data. That is the focus group. So in the focus group, we usually do as a group interview of 8 to 6 people or 6 to 8 people, wherein the moderator leads the discussion and he is the one who is going to probe or question you the anything that he has to ask. So it is a group interview, focus group. Right. Before we move to the advantages of focus group, all I want to tell you is about two things. The first one is a discussion guide and the other one is a focus blog. So what is a discussion guide? So discussion guide is a guide which tells you about the rules or purpose of the focus group interview that is going to happen. So it is a kind of outline. What are the rules we are going to follow, or what is the purpose of this particular interview, what type of data is being collected. That is the discussion guide. When we talk about the focus block is similarly as a focus group. The only difference is that it happens in the internet. So it is also a collective qualitative data technique. Right. So I'm sure that focus group, what is focus group, is clear to each one of you. Now we'll move to the advantages of focus group. There are a lot of advantages which comes along with the focus group. The first one is synergy. Synergy means that it is a combined collection or collaboration. See, if we are taking one person for the interview and we are going to the next person in the next time, then you see there are a lot of time which is being involved. So in the synergy, when we talk about focus group, there are 6 to 8 people collectively we are gathering the information from them, right? Then we have snowballing. What does snowballing means? In snowballing, it means that one answer from one person triggers the response from other persons. So here it is a kind of piggyback approach, wherein one person is giving their ideas, listening to what other persons had been saying. So they are backing each other ideas. Snowballing means one person comment triggers a chain reaction. So it is a kind of snowballing, gives a kind of creativity in the focus group. The third one is stimulation. Stimulation means that you are encouraged or excited to express your ideas. So snowballing leads to stimulation. Snowballing leads to stimulation. Then we have security. Why do we say that security is an advantage of focus group? Because you feel secure in telling your ideas, as in you open up and reveal. At times at one-to-one session, you do not feel comfortable in telling out, or you retain most of the information as in what the interview might think about you. But here in the focus group, because there are a lot of people together with you, you open up and you reveal a lot of information because you have a sense of security. Then we have spontaneity. Spontaneity means that since you have no idea as in what the questions or what the trigger point is going to be, your answers are spontaneous, which is like the accurate and unconventional ideas. So there is no pre-developed thought, which means it is going to be a creative thing. Then we have serendipity. Serendipity means occur by chance. So moderator might not think that you are going to ask this kind of question, and members don't know what triggers them to ask certain questions. So serendipity means that things occur by chances. Maybe the moderator does not want to ask a question, but due to some kind of question or answer or discussion, there has been a kind of question which the person could, or the people who are the members of the focus group can ask. So here the things occur by chances. Things that we think that are not going to be asked could be also asked. Then we have specialization. When we say specialization, here we talk about the moderator, that the moderator is a specialized person, somebody who has got a lot of experience. Then we have specific scrutiny. Specific scrutiny means that there is a close examination by the moderator. All the data is collected and also recorded. The next one is structure. The structure is very flexible in a focus group. It is not like that there is a certain language that we have to follow. There are some people who might be comfortable in English language. There might be some people who are comfortable in Hindi language. So the structure is very flexible, which means we can use any kind of language. And the last one is the speed. Speed means here the advantage of speed is that it is very quick. At one similar time, you are able to collect data from 8 to 9 or 6 to 8 number of people. So here we talked about the advantages of focus group: synergy, snowballing, stimulation, security, spontaneity, serendipity, specialization, specific scrutiny, structure, and the speed. These are the advantages of a focus group. Now we'll talk about the disadvantages of focus group. So while we were talking about the advantage, you remember that there were 10 S, right? 10 S. These were the 10 S that we were talking about when we were talking about the advantages of focus group. Now moving ahead with the disadvantage of focus group, we'll talk about 5M, right? We'll talk about 5M. The first one is misjudgment, which means that the results may be misjudged. Results may be misjudged. You said something and the moderator understood something. So it is misjudgment. That is a disadvantage of focus group. So it can be a biasness of the moderator. The next M is moderation. Moderation means that how is the chemistry when we talk about the chemistry of members. Right, this has to be in moderate form. See, all those people who have been taken for a focus group interview are different people. They are not related to each other. So we might not know that whether they are comfortable with each other or not. Maybe there are some people who are very talkative, and there are some people who are not going to talk. So how is the chemistry? Maybe somebody is very violent and maybe somebody is a person who is very calm and peacekeeping. So we need to see what is the moderation. At times what happens that a moderator who has got 10 to 10 to 16 years of more than experience, which is required for being a moderator, he is not able to handle the focus group because there are some elements which are violent and they disrupt the discussion. So in the moderation, we talk about the when moderator is not able to moderate the focus group. He is not able to maintain the focus group, as in if there is any kind of disruption in the discussion of the focus group. The third one is the messiness. Why do we say messiness? Because it is an unstructured nature. One trigger point, one sentence, one idea may lead to another which might or might not have a relation. So there is a messiness. Too many people, one people is saying something, the other one says something. So all together they start discussing, right? So that is messiness. There is not a structured way that if one person is saying, then the other person is going to give a chance. So in that way, it is an unstructured in nature, which creates messiness. The fourth one is misrepresentation. Misrepresentation also reports to the members as well as the moderator. Maybe I am trying to say something, or maybe I am trying to represent something, and the other person has misrepresented it or have thought something else out of it. So that is misrepresentation. And the last M is the meeting. Why? Meeting is a disadvantage of focus group because all these members, like I said, are not related to each other. So it is very difficult to bring them together at one platform at one single time. So meeting is also a disadvantage of focus group. So the 5 M's are misjudgment, moderation, messiness, misrepresentation, and meeting. Now, before we move ahead with our second topic, I want you to learn about two terms which have been frequently asked in the examination. The terms are, the first one is a mood board. What is a mood board? So, mood board is basically a visual representation. So, when I say visual representation, it could be text or images. So basically, if you understand, it is a kind of a collage. It is a kind of a collage. It could be based on a topic, some images which are related to a topic, or there could be random also. So it could be random or related to any topic, or it might convey any idea about a topic. So mood board is something which is presenting a kind of mood. It could be a collage of text, it could be a collage of images also, right? The second one is brainstorming. I'm sure that you might know what brainstorming is. So brainstorming is that you think as many ideas you want and then you say it loud. You think as many ideas and then you say it loud. Brainstorming leads to a lot of imaginative and creative processes, creative ideas. But there are disadvantages also with brainstorming. The first one is, what is the disadvantage of brainstorming? That is the production blocking. And the second one is apprehensive evaluation, apprehension. SION, apprehension. So what is production blocking? See, when I said, brainstorming, there could be a lot of people coming together and giving their creative ideas. So when it is a group of people who are doing the brainstorming activity together, and imagine there are a lot of talkative people in that particular group. Now, I am a person that I wanted to say something, but at that moment of time, there is somebody else who is talking. Once he stopped, there is another person who is giving their ideas. So by the time my chance come, I have already forgotten what I have to say. So there is a production blocking, and this generally happen when there is a talkative large group. Right. Evaluation apprehension is that because it is a group kind of activity, or maybe we are with people that we have to share our ideas, maybe I'm apprehensive of giving the idea that I want to. So I will think what people are going to think about me. If I say something, what people are going to think about me or about my thought. So what happens is that you keep that thought to yourself, and that defeats the idea of brainstorming, right? So we understood two terms, which is mood board and brainstorming. Brainstorming has got a very good advantage that it leads to a lot of creative ideas and imaginative ideas, but the disadvantage is that when there are a larger group of talkative people, my chance might not come of giving my idea, and by the time my chance comes that I want to talk about my idea, I've already forgotten what I have to speak. Evaluation apprehension is that at times I keep my thoughts to myself, thinking what people are going to talk about my thought. So when people retain their thoughts with themselves, it dysfunctions the idea of brainstorming. That is now like the focus group. We talked about focus group, which was a direct approach, which was a disclosed approach. The person or the participant who is going to be, or who from whom we are going to collect the data, they have got the idea or the purpose of the project. So I told you, while talking about the direct one, that we have got two types under that category of direct approach, which is the focus group and the in-depth interview. Now we will talk about the in-depth interview. So what is in-depth interview? So in-depth interview means that you go very deep inside one particular topic, as in what one trigger point leads to another, how is that going to help? So in-depth interview means that you are going very deep inside one particular topic. So in-depth interview, there are three types. What are those types? The first one is laddering. The second one is repertory grid technique, and the third one is the Zeltman metaphor elicitation technique. So the starting with the laddering technique, which is our first technique. So what is laddering? So laddering has been derived from the word ladder. You understand ladder? So ladder is something which has got two bamboos on the opposite parallel side, and then we connect them through the steps. So you see that we have got one step. When we move from one step to, if we want to go up, we'll move to another step. So we can't jump to second step and then do the first step. We already have to go through the steps from one step to the another step. So in laddering, what happens? It is a line of questions. Laddering is a line of questions. And these questions are linked. For example, in marketing, I might ask you what, for a particular product, I might ask you what is the best feature of any product. Like I asked you, what is the best feature of a product? Suppose you gave me an example or you give me an answer for what is the best feature. Linking to this best feature, I might ask you what is the benefit of this best feature that you feel is. Linking to that benefit of best feature, I might ask you another question which states, how does that benefit make you feel? See, so what I am doing is I am trying to explore your ideas. So I am going in depth. I am trying to explore your ideas. I'm trying to know what your thoughts or your feelings are about that product. Understand once again. In-depth interview in the laddering technique, it is a line of questions which are linked. For example, I might ask you a question about a product. I'll start with what is the best feature of this product? Once you give me the answer, what is the best feature according to you? I will ask you what is the benefit of this best feature and how does that benefit is going to make you feel. So I'll ask you questions which will be like linked to each other so that you are able to tell me, or you are going to give all your thoughts and details about how you feel about that particular product. It is going to tell me about your inner feelings and desires. This is what in-depth interview laddering technique does. The second one is the repertory grid technique. So what happens in a repertory grid technique? There are some kind of questions which are given to you, and on that basis of the question, what we do is those questions give us inferences about the personality can be made. Inferences about the personality can be made. It is not a personality or personality telling technique, but it gives you some kind of examples which tells you about the personality, right? That's a repertory grid technique. It is also a kind of in-depth interview. Now, the third one is the Zeltman metaphor elicitation technique. What happens in a Zeltman metaphor elicitation technique? It is again a market research tool and a qualitative one. So here in this, we ask the participant to give non-picture or non-verbal image to describe a person or a product. So metaphorically means, for example, I want to know which is the soap that you use. So instead of telling me that you use a particular soap, you will tell me a non-verbal image of it. As in, like if you ask me, Latika, what is the favorite or which kind of soap do you want to use? So I will say milk. So what comes to your mind when I say milk? Milk means dove. It could be Dove, right? Because Dove is a soap which is made up of milk. So here there is a metaphor and I am eliciting that metaphor and giving an answer to that. So what happens in it is described with a picture or a non-verbal image. Secondly, through that picture, researcher understands the feeling of the product. So you're not going to tell the name of the product directly, but you will say or you'll talk about or you'll say a metaphor that the researcher will understand thinking what is that picture, right? So in-depth interview, when we talked about in-depth interview, we were talking about three types of in-depth interview. The laddering technique, wherein we link the questions and then try to figure out or explore the inner feelings and the ideas what a person thinks about a particular product. Repertory grid technique, it is that technique wherein we understand the personality and inferences that can tell us about a particular personality. Zeltman metaphor elicitation technique, wherein through a metaphor we try to understand the feeling about a certain product, right? That's the in-depth interview. Now, in-depth interview and focus group, please try to remember that it comes under the disguised one, wherein the approach or the purpose of the project is known, right? Projective technique is an indirect approach wherein we have no idea as to what is the purpose of the particular project, right? So we'll talk about the projective techniques. Like I said, it is an indirect one. Indirect method of qualitative technique, right? Indirect method. The purpose of the project is not known. It reveals hidden emotions. It is also unstructured, and sometimes it also happens that you want to tell something but you are not able to, right? So these projective techniques help you to express feelings which otherwise are difficult to articulate. So these are the projective techniques. There are different types of projective techniques. We'll study about them each one by one. Projective techniques. So like I said, there are four types of projective techniques: association, completion, construction, and the expressive one. When we talk about the association, association means that we are going to associate. We are going to associate. Right. So what happens in association technique? There is a stimulus. We'll give you a stimulus and we'll ask you to associate or give us an answer that comes fresh up to your mind, as in what suddenly comes when we try to ask you a particular thing. So association happens when we give you a stimulus and ask you to respond with the first thing that comes to your mind, right? First thing that comes to your mind. So example of association is like, examples are word association test. Word association test also we call as VAT. So I gave you a word called body. So there could be a sentence that I ask you to associate or make on body. So maybe somebody say that I have got a very strong body, right? The other person might answer that my body is little sore because I have done a lot of exercise today. So people will give you a stimulus, and what you do is you tell us the first thing that comes to your head. That is association. You associate. There is another example of association, that is the ink blot test. What happens in Rossouch ink blot test? So through the ink blot, there are certain kind of images that comes up. We put, with the help of ink, we blot on a paper, and there are certain kind of images might come. So maybe there is an ink blot and I feel that ink blot associates to an animal called elephant. Maybe you think that it associates to a owl. So how do you associate? We come to know through this projective techniques, because each and every person would have a different association for a different word or a picture or image that is being shown to them. That is the association, right? Then we have the first one was association. Now we have the completion. So what happens in a completion? That we have incomplete sentences and we ask you to complete them. It could be a story completion or a sentence completion. So what happens in completion? That initial structure is given to you. We give you half sentence, or we give you to complete it, or maybe we tell you the initial part of the story and we ask you to write the conclusion of that story. So we want you to complete it. Depends on, there could be different answers, people are different, so they have got different thoughts. So completion of that one particular sentence would be different from other people. That is how we come to know about the inner feelings of different individuals, right? So when I said completion means that initial structure is given to you, and what are you going to do? You are going to complete it basis on that initial structure, right? That is completion. Then we have the construction. So what happens in construction? That initial structure is very less, or initial structure is not there, that is not given to you. We ask you to construct it in your own story. For example, we have a thematic apperception test. So what happens in a thematic apperception test? There is an image that is given to you and we ask you to write your own story. For example, there is a lady standing with a man. There could be a story from my end that maybe they are couple. There could be a story from someone else that they are father and daughter. So construction, the thematic apperception test is a type of a constructive projective techniques wherein we construct our own story. Other example is the Rosenzweig picture frustration study. So in Rosenzweig picture frustration study, there are 24 pictures which are given to you, and like I said, it would be a frustration study. There would be images that had been there and there would be dialogue box, and you have to write dialogue depending upon what you think that image is trying to display. So when I'm talking about projective techniques, how questions come in the examination. So they're not going to ask you which of them is a projective technique. They might ask you that thematic apperception test is a type of which kind of projective technique, and then the options would be given to you. So when I'm talking about projective techniques, please remember the examples. Association, we talked about the ink blot test and the word association test. Completion, we talked about how we are going to complete a story, right? Construction, when I talked about thematic apperception test. We talked about Rosenzweig picture frustration study. So example, know what example belong to which kind of projective technique. The last one is the expressive. What happens in the expressive? Expressive could be that you are going to express what you think about it. For example, role playing is one of the expressive technique. You are given a role that you need to display. The second could be third person technique. So what happens in a third person technique, that we give you a situation and we ask you to evaluate that person, evaluate that particular situation, thinking that you are a third person. So what happens in a third person technique? The individual who is acting as a third person while giving the evaluation might also include what he thinks. So the researcher also knows that this kind of feeling or the expression that he is going to display is something which is behind his or her conscious. So while describing the third party, at times the person reveals their own beliefs and ideas, right? So these are the projective techniques. Now I'm just repeating that for you. What we studied today was different types of qualitative techniques, right? And in that we studied the indirect and the direct one. In the indirect one, we talked about the projective techniques. In the direct one, we studied the focus group and the in-depth interview. Now we'll talk about the data analysis for qualitative research. So when we say data analysis, which means that the data has been collected and now we are going to analyze it. Firstly, I want to tell you that analysis does not happen after the data is collected. Analysis starts as soon as you start gathering the data. So it is a kind of an ongoing process. And it starts as soon as you start collecting the data. So in the data analysis for qualitative research, we are going to study the steps of the data analysis for qualitative research. So the first step is data assembly. So what we do in data assembly, we collect data from different sources. These sources could be interview, these sources could be field data, these sources could be survey. So the first step is to assemble the data. We need to collect all the data, all the information which for the purpose of that particular research. Then the second one is data reduction. Data reduction means that we need to throw away the unuseful data, throw away the unuseful data and keep with us the important and the relevant data. Keep the relevant data. When we keep the relevant data, we then code that data into meaningful data. So data reduction basically means that keep the useful data, retrieved meaningful data, and throw away the data which is of no use to you. That is the data reduction. Then is the data display. When you have got that data, what you do is you display that data. How it can be displayed? It can be displayed through graphs, It can be displayed through a written document or charts, right? So firstly we assemble the data, then we reduce the data, and we then display the data. After displaying the data, we need to make sure that data is verified. Data verification means accuracy of data so that this data can be used for different projects. See, there is a difference between data verification and data validation. There are sometimes that you confuse these two words, data verification and data validation. So with an example, understand what data verification is and data validation is. So you go to the airport and you verify your Aadhaar card. That is data verification, that the accuracy of data, what you have data you have shown is correct, that is accurate. Your age mentioned there, the name of your father or husband, that is the accurate data. That data you have provided while booking your ticket, and that is the data you are verifying through your Aadhaar card. That is data verification. When we talk about data validation, so for data validation, we check your age. Your age is showing 29. It is a positive figure. Data validation, if we want to compare, we'll see the number is not in minus, because somebody's birthday or the age could not be in minus, right? Or the age is not more than 120 years and you are somebody who is of slim fit and of young age. That is data validation. So always while trying to understand what data verification or data validation, data verification is accuracy of data and data validation is the correctness of data. So we studied the steps for the data analysis. Like I said, data analysis is an ongoing process. It starts as soon as you start collecting the data. Now, what additional information I want to uh, talk about is the approaches to data analysis. Approaches to data analysis. It's the additional information. This is not part of the topic, but yes, questions have been asked, and that's the reason we have decided to add this information in the qualitative research techniques and tools. So here I will talk about grounded theory. I'm sure that each and everyone is clear about the grounded theory. We have already studied grounded theory. Then we'll talk about content analysis. And also I want to tell you about a term called as semiotics. Right. So grounded theory, I'm sure that each and every one of you knows what a grounded theory is. Grounded theory is where we generate a theory through data collection. So here it is generation of a theory through data collection. Content analysis is that the theory is already generated. What we are going to do is we are going to reduce the data, or we are going to summarize it, summarize and structure. What is semiotics? Semiotics means study of sign and symbols. Study of signs and symbols. So we do not see, when talking about semiotics in marketing research, we do not see the people or the consumer as an individual who have their own choice, but what we see them as a reflection of their culture. You know, a person is buying a soap of a certain soap. He's buying a soap like Lux. A certain person is buying a soap which is to the Patanjali brand. So here we do not see that the people are giving their own individual choices, but we see what type of culture or what type of surrounding that they are coming from. That is semiotics, signs and symbols, the signs and symbols that we feel. For example, I might think that, somebody who is using a bath and body shop is somebody from the Western cultural side. Or maybe, I might think that there's somebody who has used the Patanjali soap. Maybe he's from the more towards the Ayurvedic or more towards the rural side. That is the semiotics. We study the sign and symbol. We do not, in the marketing research, we do not see that these are the individual person who have got their own personal choices, but we see them that they are a reflection of their culture or the surrounding. That is semiotics. Okay, right? So I think that we are done for today's class, and now we'll do some practice question just to repeat and you recollect what we have studied today. What we have done is we have studied about the different types of qualitative research tools and techniques. I informed you that it is divided into two. One is the direct and the indirect approach, basis on how or what information or the purpose is known to the participant or not. When we talk about the direct one, yes, the participant knows the purpose of the project. Indirect one, the participant has no idea, or this is the first time that they are going to know what is the purpose of the project. In the direct one, we learned about focus group. A focus group is a small group wherein 6 to 8 people are interviewed together through a moderator. Focus group, we studied about the 10S, the 10 advantages of focus group. We studied about 5M, the disadvantages of focus group. Then we moved ahead with the in-depth interview. I told you what in-depth interview, the types of in-depth interview. We talked about laddering technique. We talked about the repertory grid technique and also the Zoltman metaphor elicitation technique. After the in-depth interview was completed, that was the direct technique, or the direct types were completed. Then we moved into the indirect type and we talked about different kind of projective techniques: association, completion, and construction, and the expressive techniques. Right. So this was our qualitative research techniques and tools. Before we end this class, I would like you to have some practice questions with us, and any kind of dissimilarity in your ideas with what we have studied today, you can definitely write to us. But before we end this class, let's discuss some practice questions. So the first practice question is, what do you call a set of probing questions posed one-on-one to a subject by a trained interviewer so as to gain an idea of what the subject thinks about something, why he or she behaves in a certain way? So it is one-to-one, no, one-to-one interview, trained interviewer. It could not be a discussion guide. I told you what a discussion guide is. A discussion guide is which gives an outline, a mind map, an outline of how a focus group is going to perform. It's not a diary. So the correct answer is depth interview. The next question is, which of the following is a disadvantage of online focus group? Online focus group, I told you, focus block, right? So the correct answer would be observation of participants' body language is not possible. Reason being, it is an online focus group. You will not be able to understand the body language of a particular participant. All of the following are the characteristics of traditional focus group except unstructured, spontaneous discussion. This is focus group. Guided by a moderator, focus group. Larger group of participants, we did not discuss, are often recorded. See, traditional. In the traditional, whenever we talk about traditional, there was not involvement of technology, which means we don't know whether it was recorded or not. So when we talk about the traditional focus group, obviously they were often not recorded, are often recorded, is not the characteristic of a traditional focus group. is the personal interviewing that involves inviting 6 to 10 people to gather for a few hours with a trained interviewer to talk about a product, service, or organization. I'm sure each and everyone would know the answer for this, and that is focus group interviewing. Which of the following have the ability to capture responses from participants in a less structured and more imaginative way than direct questioning? What were when the imagination was used? When we were talking about the word association test, when we were talking about the thematic apperception test, and these were the type of projective techniques. So the answer is answer number A, which is projective techniques. Right. So I'm sure and I believe that each one of you has understood what I have taught to you about the marketing research. This was very important topic. There have been lot of questions that have been asked about the projective techniques or the kind of in-depth interview. While I was teaching you the projective techniques, I asked you to remember the examples. They might ask you that thematic apperception test is a kind of which projective technique. So it is a kind of completion projective technique, right? So I would like to wrap up the class for today's lecture, and in the next class we will continue from this same topic. Thank you.